Dear friends and fellow Earth citizens from about 140 countries around the world, this is such a beautiful reflection of humanity as one single organism. We're so happy that you will share this moment with us. How can we rise from the present crisis we're in to start living in harmony with new nature instead? My name is Annika Dopping and I'm from Sweden. And I would like to start by introducing the hosting organization of the discussion, namely World Forum for Ethics in Business, and the managing director, Christoph Glaser. Please tell us about your forum.
Thank you so much, Annika. And it's good to see you all. That's right. So the World Forum for Ethics in Business has been founded by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar back in 2006 and holds ever since annual conferences in the European Parliament, and since 2010 also conferences around the globe. You know, bringing good governance to the world is surely a technical challenge. We need structures, we need systems in place, but we have come to understand that it's even more importantly an adaptive challenge. It's a question of mindset, it's a question of culture. And Peter Drucker famously said that the best strategy can be eaten by culture for breakfast. So the question is, how can we make sure that the people do the right thing even if nobody is watching? And I think Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's inspirational leadership has really led the way in that regard.
Thank you so much, Christoph Glaser, for hosting this important meeting today. And we continue with the president of your organization, Ms. Rajita Kulkarni in India. Please tell, you must be so proud of this, all these meetings taking place right now.
Absolutely, Annika. I think in a way this pandemic has compelled us to disrupt the way we live our lives, to innovate in the way we connect with each other. And I think it has shown us unprecedented ways in which we can come together as a global community. So I would really like to start by thanking our colleagues in Sweden, Pia Landenpera, and others who have helped facilitate this panel today, and also our very senior trainer and leader of the Art of Living organization, Swami Jyotirmay in Europe, who has helped us facilitate today. So we are very happy. This is in a series of panels that and think tank conversations we have been having on different subjects convened by the World Forum for Ethics in Business.
And what can you tell us about your actions around climate change?
Absolutely. I think you said it right. And in that, I personally take inspiration from Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, because in the way his organizations, our organizations are run around the world, are in full compliance of the ethical standards of the country, of the regulators there, and at the same time growing in a very sustainable way to make a tangible impact to the communities. Because caring for the planet, nurturing our planet is actually quite intrinsic to so many of our cultures around the world. And the Art of Living Foundation, founded by Sri Sri, also the International Association for Human Values, both international organizations, and us as the World Forum, I think have been united in our efforts. So if you just look at some of the numbers, Annika, they are quite staggering. Like in the past 3 decades or so, the volunteers, and all of this work has been driven by volunteers. So the volunteers have planted more than 81 million trees. Can you imagine? In around the world, 81 million trees. And this year we have taken a resolution, earlier this year, in fact in February, to launch a program called Mission Green Earth, where we have taken a global pledge to plant and nourish and nurture 5 million trees in the next 5 years. So in increasing the green cover, I think the effort has been on since 4 decades. In fact, I'm also associated with Sri Sri's university, where we transformed like a barren piece of 200 acres of land from 2 trees to 100,000 trees, making it a green campus and a community for flora, fauna, and birds of all types. So in action and in vision, I think the work has been going on. Also, the work on natural resources conservation, Annika, has been a big effort. But in just the last 3-4 years in India alone, more than 46 rivers have got rejuvenated, which means that rivers which had completely dried with water tables going very deep below and riverbeds drying out have got rejuvenated with almost 250 million liters of water now back for use to more than 7 million people.
It's amazing with the spread and the results of all you're doing around the world. Actually, I'm hearing how you take care of the elements. You purify the water, you take care of the soil, you take care of the air and energy as well, I know with solar energy. So you're really around the planet with tremendous power from all the volunteers. Thank you so much, Rajita, for telling us. And
Thank
good
you.
luck in the future with that. And then we turn to the founder of all this, not only these two organizations that Ms. Kulkarni mentioned, but also the Art of Living Foundation. Congratulations to you, Shri Shri, for all the manifestations of your extremely powerful visions.
I am very grateful for the volunteers. Actually, the volunteers who does this whole work, and they are highly inspired. You know, I got inspired by Mahatma Gandhi when I was young, because my grandfather lived with Mahatma Gandhi in his ashram. So my father was also a big fan of Mahatma Gandhi. So from that, I think what work he has done, Mahatma Gandhi did, what we are doing is, when you compare, it's nothing. It's just a drop in the ocean. And today, with all the facilities, we need to do more. And especially save the planet Earth. The very principle, you know, you be the change you want to bring, is what Mahatma Gandhi has always said. So we just adopted that one sentence. You want to bring the change, let us start from where we are. So we started in a small way 40 years ago with very little resources. But then, you know, when there is clarity in mind and purity in heart, and you are sincere in your action, nature simply supports. So people, because the world is full of good people, everyone want to do something good to the planet Earth. But this COVID-19, in a very strange way, has made the nature rejuvenate itself. You know, some of the rivers, they never had such pure water in India. For example, the Ganges water, which more than several $1 billion have been spent by the government to clean it. It didn't work. But this 40 days or 30 days of lockdown, I tell you, the river water have become purer. We could sight dolphins in Mumbai, which they had never seen. And the weather here in Bangalore, for the first time in 50 years, I see the weather has become so good. I think we should have 1 week of lockdown in the whole world every year. On an Earth Day, we must celebrate. This should perhaps give the time for nature to rejuvenate herself. What do you say, Anika?
It's an excellent idea. Thank you so much, Rishi. It seems as if both humans and the planet, nature, has the innate ability to rejuvenate itself once we give the opportunity. Thank you so much for now. We will turn to our Scandinavian guests, one at a time, where you present yourself and also mention 1 or 2 benefits that you can see from this involuntary slowdown in society. Ms. Rebecca Lemoine.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Rebecca Lemoine. I'm a conservation biologist and also member of the Swedish Parliament for the Green Party. And although there is a social distancing now, I see people coming together in a strong solidarity. And I think in this crisis, I see people become less machine-like and more human, less stressed and more present. And I think this pandemic shows how vulnerable our society is. And many people are now debating how we must strengthen our resilience in all different ways, and also questioning our truths. So in a time when there is such need for a paradigm shift, this is important and much welcomed.
Thank you, Rebecca. We continue with our most senior participant, a gentleman who has really experienced massively how real progress can stem out of the worst crisis. Mr. John Eliasson, welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be with this group. I'm Jan Eliasson, working now with Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Among other things, we are broadening the concept and understanding of security. Security in today's world is not only military and political. Security is dealing with climate change soundly, dealing with pandemics, and seeing security generally as something that in the end will affect human beings. And that is the basic philosophy we have to keep in mind now. I'm glad that you, Annika, pointed to the fact that we have a raging crisis, and we should think of all those who are dying and all those who are in grief and all those who don't have jobs and all that. So we should be able to deal with the present crisis, but at the same time, we must already think very carefully about the world after Corona. We need to remind ourselves that we are all interdependent and that we need cooperation both inside countries and between countries, and that we also should revive the true sense of solidarity, caring for our fellow human beings, both in your own local community, but also internationally and globally.
Thank you so much for now. And we continue with a former colleague of yours from Norway, Mr. Erik Solheim.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Erik Solheim. I was a Norwegian minister and I was with the UN. I spent basically my entire adult life working on environment and development, as well as peace, and that's where I came to know and respect Sri. We worked together in the peace process in Sri Lanka, and we tried also jointly to do something in Nepal, and of course also with Jan Eliasson, I worked on different peace processes. So we are knowing each other for a long time, and I think there's a lot we can achieve together. I mean, as Jan said, this crisis has shown the best and the worst of humanity. The worst is quarreling between nations and quarreling within nations. The best is the outburst of solidarity and dignity, basically everywhere, where people are really able to show the love and respect they have from others. It's great to see.
Thank you, Erik. Yeah, I know in the Ayurvedic tradition in India, one has always said, what you focus on grows. So if we focus on all these positive opportunities that arise alongside with the catastrophic events, we can really make this increase. So it's a question of focus to a great extent. We continue with Pella Thiel, WWF Sweden's Environment Hero of the Year 2019 in the category Biodiversity. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. I'm also part of Global Networks for Rights of Nature, where I was part of founding the Swedish branch of Rights of Nature and also the Transition Network. And I believe that this crisis, in a way, it was inevitable. There was no way of avoiding it. We have designed for it with growth and globalization and urbanization. And actually, business as usual hasn't been an option for decades. But it's like we couldn't help ourselves. We were like addicts who needed the help to take a pause, to take a break, to take time for reflection and maybe connection with what's really important. And in a way, I think the most important gift might be that we actually lose hope in things that we need to let go of, so that we can find hope somewhere else, and maybe that's closer to home than we thought. And as previous speakers said, there's already a lot of alternatives being created worldwide at the moment, alternative structures which respect the human connection with nature, but they're not visible and they're not seen as alternatives yet, until we realize that our old systems are failing us. So that's what I think that this crisis might give us.
Thank you, Pella. Yes, it's interesting in the world Sri Sri Ravi Shankar and all those NGOs, people voluntarily go to retreats to get the time to reflect and to rediscover the true values of life and reconnect with yourself. And we are lucky to have one of the strongest voices, spokespersons for the planet with us too, also from Sweden, but presently in Germany, Mr. Johan Rockström.
And unfortunately, my voice is a little bit weak today, but I hope it carries. And it's wonderful to be here. And I'd like to take on exactly where Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, your wonderful reflections on the beautiful rebounds of nature we're seeing right now with cleaner airs and dolphins out of Mumbai. And you may have seen some of the science coming out in the Northern Hemisphere with the most recent estimates that we may actually reduce the number of premature deaths in Europe by 11,000 people who die each year of air pollution. 7 million people die each year worldwide because of indoor and outdoor pollution, because of burning of fossil fuel and unsustainable heating systems. We see that pure air and nature and ecosystems are bouncing back. It tells us something incredibly important, something incredibly powerful, which is exactly what Pella Thiel was indicating, that isn't it remarkable how we over 150 years have accepted that the only pathway to generate wealth and prosperity and development is at the cost of humans and the planet. I just find that to be just a remarkable reminder that the virus is now giving us this gift of showing us that, oh my God, you know, this GDP growth-based paradigm is simply too costly. It is not acceptable, neither morally, nor health-wise, nor economically, to pursue this kind of development at the expense that it has caused us. But what I find most important right at this moment is something which also has surprised me and many of my colleagues. I mean, all of us in this conversation saw the financial crisis 2008, we saw the tsunami, we've seen 9/11, we've seen so many of these shocks, and many times the voices were very clear. Let's learn. Let's not bounce back to the same world as before, the same vulnerable, unresilient, pre-crisis situation we had. But what did we do? We didn't learn. We bounced back and put the same vulnerable financial system as we had prior to the collapse in 2008. But now something is happening. We see as never before in the midst of this terrible health crisis, a mature debate on a green recovery. We see that in South Korea, we see it in Europe, we see it in China, we see it in many, many parts of the world, from business, policy, communities, science, being really open with this feel of unease that now is the time to recognize that we're not bouncing back to the old world. There's something new around the corner.
Thank you, Johan. Well, the former Prime Minister Winston Churchill formed a very famous quote, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And that's about what we're discussing right now. Jan Eliasson, you have met many crises, and of course this is rare and unique in that we all of a sudden have a common enemy all around the world. It's not between resolving countries against each other. How have you experienced that a crisis is really the opportunity to start something new?
Well, I think Johan Rockström is right in pointing to the unique nature of this pandemics. 2 or 3 months ago, hardly anyone spoke about it. We who fought the battle of being more active on climate change were feeling a state of hopelessness because we are at tipping points. But now this has been a reminder of the existential threat that we face on the climate change. So what we have to do now is to build a bridge between the pandemic's energy, so to speak, to the energy that we need for the climate change steps that are necessary. I have mostly spent time on mediating in conflicts and wars, 6 of them in the past. one time I came home and my daughter, she was only 13 at the time, she said, why do you sit down with these dictators, Saddam Hussein and others? Why don't you instead, Dad, negotiate peace with nature? And at that time I smiled about it, but how right she was, because the basic understanding that we have to understand today is to realize that all human beings, everything that grows, every animal that lives are all interconnected. And we have in modern history utilized this to a horrible degree. And if we can sort of provide a philosophy and a policy of solidarity between human beings primarily, which is mostly lacking, but also between everything living, I think that's the road to go.
Thank you. It's amazing to hear how you all are so aware of us being part of nature. I can't help quoting one of my favorites, history professor Chief Warren Lyons, who always says, how can you be an environmentalist? We are the environment. For indigenous people, it's very obvious that it's not us here and nature there. And we're not separate. We're all interconnected, interdependent in what they call the web of life, the whole web of life. I know, Pelatil, you have been working a lot with these questions. What are your reflections?
Yeah. I think what we need is to remember that, what you said, Annika, to remember that we are part of nature, because we've forgotten in this culture, and we have even forgotten that we have forgotten. It's like we think that nature is a resource for us, and that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the Western culture, that idea that nature exists for human use, that it doesn't have any interests. Other species they don't have interests of their own. And when we live by that idea, we try to control and dominate nature, and we perceive it as a dead thing. And when we do that, we kill it, which is what we are doing today. And I think, as Sri said in the beginning, the world is full of good people. So within us, we know that this isn't true. Within us, we know that nature is alive, but our policies, our frameworks, our structures in this world doesn't support that, knowing that we have deep within. So I think that we really now need global guidelines to support that understanding. So that we can kind of stop governing nature. We can never govern nature. It's alive. We can govern ourselves in relationship to nature. So actually, I think it's time to start a discussion to balance the UN Declaration of the Human Rights with the Declaration of the Rights of Nature.
Thank you, Pella. Rebecca Lemoine, you work with this in the Parliament. Please tell us about that work.
Yeah, that's right. And I completely agree with Pelatil and what you say. And I think that this Corona crisis also reminds us that this domination approach and lack of respect of our fellow species and nature will harm ourselves. Because, as you said, we are nature. And this can and must change. And an international law against environmental destruction, an ecocide law, can become true if we want to. Any of the parties of the Rome Statute can make a proposal to recognize ecocide as a criminal act. And this is something that the trade union also are in favor for, because of the human rights that has to be respected as well. So I think this is a sign of how everything is connected, and that we have to be more generous with legal rights, because we are just one out of thousands, million species in this world, but only human beings has legal rights today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Sri, what are you thinking about this connection with man and nature? How do you see how we can strengthen our understanding that we are part of a whole?
I mean, we are part of nature. You cannot be outside the nature. I mean, we are governed by the 5 elements. earth, water, fire and air and the life force that we have. At this time, there should be more humanness in society, and people should come out with their care and compassion. Of course, business is all down. For business to again restart, it takes some, but we need to balance business with human kindness. We must see that people are mentally safe and sound, because the mental health is something we need to look into. In the society, on one side there is aggression, on the other side there is depression. So when people swing to depression, it is difficult. If they swing to aggression, it is even worse. To kindle more compassion to all those who do not have a square meal, help out them. And then on the other hand, people who are in fear and anxiety and depression, to get them back to their normal self, where they have confidence, they have motivation, and they are able to live their life in a normal sense. If a person is peaceful inside, he is able to take any challenge.
Thank you. Eric Solheim, I understand that you have been then in Bangalore at the ashrams. How has that affected you? That's very exciting to hear. If you can resonate with what Sri Sri is describing. Yes,
I think it basically affects you on the lines which she explained. I mean, there's no contradiction whatsoever between the inner and the outer. I mean, these are completely dependent on each other. If you have an inner peace but don't do anything for others, what is it worth? On the other hand, of course, the society around you in many ways decides what you will do. So inner and outer should be seen as one. Then we are full human beings. And I think that's, as I understand it, the message coming out of the beautiful ashram in Bangalore. We need to call for peace, call for cooperation, because if we cooperate and coordinate, we can achieve a lot. And Europe, India, China, and all the good forces in the United States, of course, can achieve this together with Africa, with Latin America, with everyone. I mean, the vast majority of humans want us to work together and to also to build on the rebounds of nature. I looked at this fantastic rebounds of nature, and some of you spoke about it. Penguins are walking down the streets of Cape Town. There are jackals in Tel Aviv at night in the big parks. Turtles are nesting at the beaches in Thailand. Turtles were endangered, and American conservationists speak about the party of wildlife in the fantastic American national parks. And people want to see this also after the crisis, and it gives us a fantastic argument after the crisis to go out and mobilize people for a new and better future.
But I think if you combine what Eric has been telling us so correctly, that the solutions are out there and they are not only available, but they're more attractive. And Pelle and Rebecca's points about if you add the elements of responsibility and the, quite frankly, the legal obligations with Ravi Shankar's points about humanism, I think we have a perfect cocktail for a pathway that can take us towards a much safer, just, and sustainable, resilient future. We have so much evidence or so much indications that this is now becoming a much more, open part of the public discourse already now.
Thank you so much, Johan. Sri Sri, you have been working so much in India and all over the world in doing just this with people who are in great stress, in violence, in disharmony, in depression, in aggression, and in prisons and elsewhere. And you have seen over and over again that it's possible to find balance and find harmony. And as long as you have a very clear vision, how would you like to conclude how we can start living in nature thanks to this very crisis that's so painful for many, but that can be the spark for a new life?
Exactly what what Eric has mentioned. Eric Solheim has studied. He has studied Sri Lanka, has studied here in Nepal, and has been working so hard. So all the way from Scandinavia, he came and he studied the people, their mindset, and you know, when you really go deep into the mindset of people, you can see that they are not bad people, they are good people, but they are wrong notions, wrong understanding, and a sense of wanting to dominate. See, basically in the bottom of it, if you really go to the bottom of it, it is lack of understanding, lack of humanism. I won't say they lack humanism, they have it, but lack of expression of humanism. And they build wall between themselves, which is imaginary. When greed takes over a person, a fear takes over a human psyche, they would do anything to destroy other human beings and destroy the nature as well. The world has become sort of one unit. It has always been one unit. So we have to really care for human safety and security, both through putting laws and regulations in place, as well kindling the humanness that is widely present in all human beings. In this way, we connect to nature, we connect to fellow human beings, we live a life of more peace and harmony. We work towards it, I think we can get it, we can achieve it.
Thank you so much, Rishi, and thank you all the panelists for sharing your wisdom. I do wish us all the most breathtakingly beautiful growth into a reset for humanity with the governance that's worthy of the highest part of us. And I see the great potential with us all coming together. Thank you all for now.